Welcome back to our special on the human tragedy of human trafficking. It takes on all forms. Even though the largest portion is the sex trade, labor is another form of human slavery.
So many of these women or men or children have been lied to, tortured, forced to do things that they didn't want to do, forced to be in places that they didn't want to do, beaten for not doing it, belittled, insulted. So it is a total degradation of a human being.
Marissa Ugarte founded the Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition. She knows well the pain, the agony, the nightmare of human trafficking. Her group brings together over 60 government and nonprofit agencies to combat the issue.
When we receive the victim of human trafficking, whether it's domestic or international, they have been through a lot. In order to be a victim of human trafficking, you have to have force, fraud, and coercion.
As with other forms of human trafficking, it is incredibly difficult to locate.
But in the agricultural community, there's always a potential for folks to look for cheap labor.
You have the circuits of apples, and you have the peaches, and you have the tomatoes, and you have the strawberries, and they move them. How are you going to find out?
Why do so many of us choose to look the other way? Marissa says the answer can be found in our pocketbooks.
You cannot be a hypocrite and turn the other way because you know that if you don't have cheap labor, your cauliflower is going to cost $13.
And if you think it's just field workers, well, think again.
You have a lot of the things where you may be very surprised to find human trafficking. You may find them in nail salons, massage parlors, not exactly with a happy ending with balloons. You may find them anywhere that you least suspect. Remember, what fuels trafficking is money.
Money in industries traditionally associated with sex trafficking, such as strip clubs and massage parlors.
In a massage parlor where individuals were really kept as slaves. They weren't even allowed to go out.
Or where you are in a massage parlor where you're doing a job and at the same time you're forced to do other than a job. And if you don't do it, you are also beaten and enslaved.
That's one of the challenges that we have because victims oftentimes don't identify themselves as victims. People that come here illegally typically come for a better life. They come here to find jobs. And so those are individuals that may be in a better situation to be exploited by the labor sectors.
Exploitation that leads to sheer fear of seeking help. Tragically, the end result, the victimization grows more intense.
One of the ways that some of these victims are held in check, keeping their documents, the fear of deportation that's being used to control victims, particularly in the labor trafficking industry.
The labor part of human trafficking is even more devastating. You have the complement of labor trafficking on a servitude house where you're a servant, where you can be beaten, where you can be raped, which is both sex and labor.
It is coercion that leads to a sense of helplessness, similar to those who become trapped in sex trafficking.
To live in the tension of being in a place that is not legal, and then on top of that, have the tension that you may lose your life, that your family in Mexico, they know where they live, that you have to send them money because they'll starve, and you have to accept whatever labor conditions they're giving you, that's pretty bad.
In the back rooms of pretty much every strip club I've ever been in, including the one here and one of the two that I'm aware of here in Missoula, prostitution is happening.
A one-way street that leads to an even darker side of life.
The women who are working in strip clubs are not making money from the dance where they're getting a $1 or a $5 tip. That's not enough money much of the time to pay the stage fee or the other fees for DJs and bouncers that are required. They are pressured economically to prostitute in order to make enough money.
It's not all about the sex trade. A lot of it is forced labor. Depending on what study you look at, 20 to 30% of the people who are coming in aren't involved in the sex trade. They are in the involuntary work portion of this human trafficking.
As with sex trafficking, the Attorney General of North Dakota knows just how hard it is to identify and help those trapped in forced labor.
They could be afraid, they could have been threatened that they're going to be deported, or they'll be arrested, or they can have been abused, or they are addicted to drugs and they need that steady supply of drugs in order, they think, to survive. And so for all of those reasons, it takes a great deal of time to work with them, to assure them that we in law enforcement are not going to arrest them, that we really want to go after the people who are the Johns, the traffickers, the people high up in the chain.
My first case of human trafficking was a girl, a 15-year-old, named Reina, who was prostituted in the migrant fields, in outside brothels. She was forced to prostitute with a time clock, kitchen clock, 10 minutes each. And she did 20 to 30 men a day, $20 with a condom, 30 without. At 15, she had a child, a little boy, Imanol. And she had him in Mexico in the trafficker's sister's house. And any time that she refused to work, the trafficker would say that he would kill the child that was in Puebla, Mexico. So that's how she was forced to do, because that's the only thing she had.
And men, women, and yes, even children are not just promised a good job and then are somehow lured into the human sex trafficking side. No. These folks are promised legitimate jobs. And then?
Well, we see labor and sex trafficking cross together often. We see cases where people begin as labor trafficking victims and then it turns into sexual exploitation. And especially when you're talking about girls, because they are sitting ducks for a crime like that.
Summer Steffen believes human trafficking is allowed to thrive in the U.S. because too many, otherwise good people, close their eyes.
You know, when good men and women do nothing, that's when evil thrives. Each one of us has a responsibility to do something to make sure that human beings are not sold.
Still to come,
it was so blatant and so in your face.
We look at how people get lured in this dark world.